I went to my boss and said to him, you know, I'm going to go do this crazy thing. And he convinced me to think about it for 48 hours before making a final decision. And the conclusion of that was this, he said, you know, this actually sounds like a really good idea to me. And so I went away and was trying to find the right framework in which to make that kind of big decision. And, you know, I'd already talked to my wife about this, and she was very supportive and said, look, you know, you can count me in 100%, whatever you want to do. So it really was a decision that I had to make for myself. And the framework I found, which made the decision incredibly easy, was what I called, which only a nerd would call, a regret minimization framework. So I wanted to project myself forward to age 80 and say, okay, now I'm looking back on my life. I want to have minimized the number of regrets I have. And you know, I knew that when I was 80, I was not going to regret having tried this. I knew that if I failed, I wouldn't regret that. But I knew the one thing I might regret is not ever having tried. And I knew that that would haunt me every day. And so when I thought about it that way, it was an incredibly easy decision. And I think that's a very good, it's if you can project yourself out to age 80 and sort of think, what will I think at that time? It gets you away from some of the daily pieces of confusion. You know, I left this Wall Street firm in the middle of the year. So that's the kind of thing that in the short term can confuse you. But if you think about the long term, then you can really make good life decisions that you won't regret later. Most regrets, by the way, are acts of omission and not commission. You know, I think most people when they're 80 years old, you know, you can do bad things. You can go murder somebody, and that would be bad, and that would be an act of commission that you would regret. But most, you know, everyday, ordinary, non-murderers, their big regrets are omissions. Is to encourage people to be bold. And people love to focus on things that aren't yet working. And that's good, it's human nature. That kind of divine discontent can be very helpful. But you really, you know, it's incredibly hard to get people to take bold bets. And you need to encourage that. And if you're going to take bold bets, they're going to be experiments. And if they're experiments, you don't know ahead of time whether they're going to work. Experiments are by their very nature prone to failure. But big successes, a few big successes, compensate for dozens and dozens of things that didn't work. So, you know, bold bets, AWS, Kindle, Amazon Prime, our third-party seller business, all of those things are examples of bold bets that did work, and they pay for a lot of experiments. No anesthesia very easily. None of those things are fun, but they don't matter. What really matters is companies that don't continue to experiment, companies that don't embrace failure. So I like the architecture we're building. I'm excited about it, but this is not a business where you can rush things or cut corners. You have to. Our motto at Blue Origin is Gradatum Ferocitor. It stands for step by step ferociously, and so we're just one step at a time. And just to give you one example, many years ago now, we wanted a third-party selling business because we knew we could add selection to the store that way. And we started Amazon auctions. Nobody came. Well, you know, that blank sheet of paper stage is one of the hardest stages. And one of the reasons it's hard is because at that stage, there's nobody counting on you but yourself. You know, one of the things that is very motivating, I mean, today it's easy because we've got, you know, millions of customers counting on us, and you know, thousands of investors counting on us, and then thousands of employees all counting on each other. But in that beginning stage, it's really just you. And you can quit any time. Nobody's going to care. And so you set about doing the simple things first. So you want to start a company. Well, the first thing you do is you should write a business plan. And so I did that. I wrote about a 30-page business plan. I wrote a first draft. In fact, I wrote the first draft on the car trip from the East Coast to the West Coast. And that is very helpful. Now, the business plan won't survive its first encounters with reality. It will always be different. The reality will never be the plan. But the the discipline of writing the plan forces you to think through some of the issues and to get sort of mentally comfortable in the space.
And I hate the plan B argument. I think, plan B with respect to Earth being destroyed is make sure plan A works.
And once you're on your way, you can't turn around and come back. The only way, you have to finish the mission. I'll leave you with just one quick thing, which is that for a long time, hundreds of years, thousands of years, the idea of going to the moon was so impossible that people actually used it as a metaphor for impossibility. And then, in the 1960s, we humans did it. And what I would hope you would take away from that is that anything you set your mind to, you can do. Von Braun said after the lunar landing, "I have learned to use the word impossible with great caution." And I hope you guys take that attitude about your lives. Step by step, ferociously. And it's the motto for Blue Origin. Basically, you can't skip steps. You have to put one foot in front of the other. Things take time. There are no shortcuts. But you want to do those steps with passion. And I think everybody has their own passion, their own thing that they're interested in. And you're very alert to the things that are in the sphere of influence of that passion. I'm so lucky. I love what I do. Then you start to understand, if you push on this knob, this will move over here and so on. And so that's the first step. Tried to get a lot of the little housekeeping details done even before we arrived in Seattle. That's how you start, one step at a time.
Even if you're not at the beginning, you have to learn enough so that you become a domain expert. But the danger is once you become a domain expert, you can be trapped by that knowledge. And so inventors have this paradoxical ability to have that 10,000 hours of practice and be a real domain expert and have that beginner's mind. Have that look at it freshly even though they know so much about the domain. And that's the key to inventing. You have to have both. And I think that is intentional. I think all of us have that inside of us and we can all do it, but you have to be intentional about it. You have to say, yeah, I am going to become an expert and I'm going to keep my beginner's mind.
And that's how small companies get a little bit bigger and then a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger until finally, at a certain stage, you reach a transition where the company has more control over its future destiny. When a company is very tiny, it needs a tremendous amount of not only hard work, but as we talked about earlier, luck. As a company gets bigger, it starts to become a little more stable, where if at a certain point in time, the company has a much bigger influence over its future outcome. It needs a lot less luck, and instead it needs the hard work. And at that point, there's a little bit more pressure, because then if you fail, you have nobody to blame but yourself. It's sort of like, I don't have any doubt about whether we're going to fail. That's the likely outcome.